Hi, my name is Eddie Yanes, and this is my final project. So for my final, I decided to redo my storytelling level. As you can see, the exterior of the home and the surrounding area is pretty much the same. The biggest addition you can see here is this giant cave that protrudes from the hill back there. So basic movement, you can see that I added a small head bob whenever the player moves forward. Just, I guess, kind of add to the realism and atmosphere. You can hear the player's footsteps when they move around. They can zoom in to investigate with E, or if they want they can do a manual zoom with the scroll wheel. And they can jump, of course. Nothing really requires jumping too much, perhaps in the cave, which I'll show later. So a lot of the lighting issues are fixed. There's pretty much, before there were a couple of artifacts from the shadows. Now they're much more cleaned up. Some areas are still pretty dark without the flashlight, so it's recommended that you keep it on. Of course, you always have the option to turn it off. And I added a physics handle for small objects, so I wouldn't be able to pick up this tire stack, for example, but I'd be able to pick up this petroleum lamp. And you can see as I pick it up on the top left, it tells me what I picked up. So if you look, it says petroleum_lamp. I can take this with me, I can drop it, I can throw it over there. So yeah, it's just, I guess, a way to add immersion to the environment. So if we come into here, a lot of this is basically the same. The TV set, the chair, the work boots over here. And one of the first changes is if you come over here, of course you can pick up these tools if you want, or you can, take them with you. But the biggest change is this right here. So I initially had a photograph of a couple that was crossed out with an X and saying, I don't know, something regarding the story. But since the story is completely different this time around, we now have a picture, or a sketch rather, of some sort of creature. And we'll get to that a bit later, but that's the first hint. And then if we come into this other room right here, we'll see that to the left we still have the bed. This gun right here, it was initially under the bed, but I noticed a lot of players didn't even notice, or they wouldn't even check, so I put it up here on top of the bed. Players can grab it, they can see the name at the top left. And then if we come over here, all of these notes on the desk are changed. I added some on the floor too. So what we have here on the floor are two drawings of what the player assumes to be the cave. So this is the mouth of the cave from the interior, and this is the interior of the cave. You see a man holding a torch peering in. And this actually accurately reflects the layout of the cave, so I guess the player kind of knows what to expect if they venture in. And then over here on the desk, we have a couple more sketches of the same type of creature. They have slight variations, but overall it's the same frame and the same sort of undead zombie look. And then we have a note from the player's friend left here as well. Here he's basically saying he took the player's machete to go exploring in the cave by himself, even though he and the player were supposed to explore together. But in exchange he left the player some gear, including the flashlight that the player has. But yeah, essentially the only thing he took with him was the machete from the player's cabin here. And then at the end he says, P.S. what's with the drawings? Asking basically, like, what's up with all of these, like the cave drawings, the creature drawings. So yeah, that kind of gives the player a hint as to what's coming up. And over here, the safe is still here. This was initially part of the first story, but I just kept it here to add more things to the environment. Perhaps this is where the player keeps his gear, or perhaps still his money. It doesn't pertain too much to the story this time around. So if we come out to the back, we can see there's still just a basic campfire here. The well. If the player decides to come over this hill, they'll see that the secret area is still over here. Not many players would venture over here, but if they do decide to come, they can see some references to Final Fantasy. There's a couple of characters in there, so that's still a nice reward for players who decide to come over on this other side. And now for the biggest change is a completely new level that I added, which is this cave in here. So as soon as I come up over here and actually go inside, it's going to bring up a loading screen, and we'll see what's inside. So now we're in the interior of the cave. You can see this cave material really adds a lot to the environment and the atmosphere. You can see the reflection of the wet walls, the reflection off of the flashlight, and the detail in the material. So now if we walk forward, you'll see that the camera shook, and if we look behind us, we'll see that we're now caved in. We can't peer outside, we can't go outside. And you'll see some of the rocks from the cave actually fell down. And this was dynamic, so it is affected by where the player is standing. You know, the rocks will move around. So we can just go over these real quick. So this is one of my favorite shots in the cave as you first come inside. You can see the fire, you can see a little bit of what lies ahead, but ultimately you can't see past that. And the fire really does a good job at providing both color and mood. So if we come up to the fire, we see these blood splatters here and up there. You can see the blood is still wet, which suggests that something happened here pretty recently, along with the fact that the fire is still lit. You can see how the color of the fire and even the color of the blood reflects off of the walls here. You can see a tint of orange and red here on the stalactites too, which I think is pretty neat. So the player can come up here and actually pick up this machete if they want. They can take it with them. Ultimately it doesn't do much for them in the sequence you're about to see right now, but the machete being here lets the player know that the friend who actually took this machete with him, for some reason left it here by the fire, didn't take it further ahead. And of course the blood is going to suggest something pretty ominous. So let's come up ahead and I'm going to let this sequence play out, and then I'll explain it right after. You can see some of these mushrooms littering the cave floor and the cave walls. It really adds a lot to the environment. And here's the sequence playing actually. So we can see how when the player passes a certain trigger box over here, I think it's roughly around this area, a chase sequence music starts playing, and the creature from those drawings that we saw earlier emerges from the corner and actually chases the player dynamically around through these tunnels. And the player actually has enough move speed to get away. If the monster were to reach the player would just die and have to restart the level. So ultimately the player knows that they have to get away from that thing. They can look behind them to see where it is. They can use a flashlight to spot it more easily. Once they come over here and actually get close to the fire, the monster will let out a roar and actually retreat back into the cave, sort of letting the player know that this is a safe area that they can stay if the monster decides to come back. And the great thing about that sequence also is that there's a nav mesh around the entire cave, so the monster could have chased the player pretty much anywhere throughout the cave. Of course it would stop here at the fire, it would disappear and retreat back into the cave. But it's really interesting to see how the AI navigates. It's really interesting how it would avoid a bunch of different obstacles and find the best route to the player to make sure that, you know, the movement is realistic and it provides, you know, that scary experience for the player. But of course, since we just ran straight down this tunnel, we didn't really get to see that dynamic movement, but as we come up here, we see that this skull is here. We can pick it up. Top left says that we're holding a skull. You can sort of investigate it, zoom in if you want. This again also suggests some kind of weird ominous thing is going on. Even in the ambient noise of the cave, you hear that sort of strange music suggesting something isn't quite right here. So as we come up through this arch and around this corner here, we can see actually that a body is being dragged from the left side of the screen here to here and disappears. And now the player knows that the monster retreated back into the cave, so they must know that it's inside of this area and must have been the one that dragged that body across. And now if the player looks over here, they see that neither the monster nor the body are actually here, suggesting that it actually went deeper into the cave, which is straight ahead. But this open area sort of suggests kind of a safe space for the player. They have more visibility. They turn the flashlight on, they can see pretty much every area in case the monster decides to come back. They also do see some blood splatters here, suggesting that they're going the right way. They can come up here and find a cross that they can pick up and take with them. Again, these things sort of just suggest what could be going on in this cave. So then the player would most likely go forward. It's the only way to go from here. And as they turn this corner, they'll see that their friend, which actually ventured into this cave, is sadly no longer alive. Assuming the monster got to them, they had a meal perhaps, and this is what's left of them. Just a bloodied corpse. And then if the player turns around,